To do his turn.
All right, welcome everybody. We're here today for a workshop.
Howdy.
Hi, howdy. Here for a workshop on 380s. Let's begin. City manager.
So this is gonna be your discussion. This was at the request of council at the last meeting when we had the item as a discussion item regarding the possibility of implementing a 380 policy ordinance. There was some discussion. I think the amount of time that it was taking, council did request that this be added as a workshop. Included in your packet is a copy of the policy and with the city attorney's notes and then a couple draft applications. Yes, I understand the applications. We did utilize another city. We borrow from each other when we do different presentations, so there will be some updates to that. I will let council, I know Darren, you had comments, questions, concerns. I don't know if you guys want to take it step by step and go through the policy as a whole. Or if you want to just outline what your concerns were, what your thought processes were, but I'll leave the discussion.
Okay, Darren.
I guess I need to catch up. I guess I need to find that document first.
I can start if you like.
Please
Yeah, I'm
start.
happy to start because I
Yeah.
went through all and recall discussion. So I'll kind of start from the top and work my way through. If I go to page 2 of 5, talks about the program requirements. My sense is those are all good. Okay, the one highlight on there results in a minimum increased taxable value to the city in a real and or business personal property, city inventory supplies. I get all that. The question I had was, what makes sense, but that gets defined further down. So if I then go to page 3, which would be program requirements, paragraph C.
See, page 3. What would that be in the packet?
Oh,
Page 9.
yeah, I'm sorry, it's page 9.
Okay. Thank you.
Excuse me.
Bless you.
Thanks. I have questions on C and D. C is a project shall not be eligible for incentives under these policy procedures if a building permit has been issued for the project prior to making an application in accordance with these policy procedures. It wasn't clear to me why we want a sticky like that. Because if I'm doing a construction job, I want to go find out all the elements. I want to make sure I get everything sorted out. So I understand my total cost. So then I could come back to the city and part of that might be getting a permit issue.
Which one specifically were you
It's under
additional?
program requirements. Item C, not additional, additional 5 notes, item C, paragraph C. A project shall not be eligible for incentives if a building permit has been issued. And I maybe didn't understand why that was there.
So that was probably, so like, so this is cut and paste from another city as well. That was probably added because if they've already started the process.
So I get
So
that.
do you want them to be midstream in a project and then be able to come?
No,
Or do you want them to start with us as a 380 from the very beginning? That would, this is what, so if they're midstream, they've already got the building permit.
okay, so here's my view. There are 2 ways to look at it. If I'm a contractor, which I am, and I'm gonna come in for a 380 agreement. I want to get all my homework done. I want my plans done. I want to be approved cost wise. So when I go to the city, I know what my total cost perspective is. So I can talk about valuations, what I think I'm looking for better plans. If I'm just in the preliminary stages, I may come forward to the city and say, hey, I'd like this, 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 and this. And then I find out to go get the permit and I've blown my cost numbers. So it's a chicken or the egg discussion. In my view, we ought to say a project shall not be eligible for incentives under these policy procedures if the project has not started construction or implementation. Because again, I'd like to go talk to Jessica and the building department to make sure I understand all the requirements if I'm gonna go do something.
I think I need more, I'm confused. So we're saying that you're not eligible if you've started your project
I know,
and you're not in agreement with that.
I'm not in agreement with that. I'd like to have done, so let's talk about how a project actually gets done. I draw plans. I go get cost estimates. I know all my numbers.
But
Okay,
you don't have to have a permit issued to get the cost estimate.
that's correct. Now I go through plan check. Let's assume I go through plan check and plan check says, ooh, Rick, you need this structural analysis done. Your beams are not properly done. You've got to change this. And I'll use,
But that's not a permit.
I know. But I have to apply for a permit before I get plan check.
No, you would submit your plans first. It's a plan review, then your permitting process.
Okay, so if that's how I get that, so. If we make it clear. So let me ask you this. Is Jessica gonna do a plan check if I don't pay for a permit?
Yeah, because we just had several plan reviews completed that didn't actually pass. They had to go back in and make adjustments.
But they didn't have to pay for permits.
Not that they pay for the plan review. That's
Okay.
not a permit.
Okay,
Well, in my mind, it's not a permit as in and we can make it specific as far as a construction permit or a.
I make a construction permit. Okay, because I'll tell you the library. Robert and Jessica would not look at the plans until I paid the permit for the library. Once I paid the permit for the library, then we're ready for plan check, plan review and all that
I
stuff.
think it's just the use of the word permit.
Yeah, if you say construction permit, I'm with you.
Verified type of permit.
Is that okay?
Yes.
We got that. Okay, item number D. Incentives provided with the policies, the next one down, we provided only to the extent that the revenue realized by the city and attributable to a project exceeds a minimum amount established by the agreement. This is a question I raised last time we talked about it. Have we thought about what the minimum amount established would be, or is everyone gonna be unique?
That is up to the council. You can set a minimum amount
Okay,
that they have to, be willing to go up to a certain level. Or you could have it where it's negotiated each contract.
so. I'm just thinking about from us, from a council standpoint, it's. Like I love about your comments about consistency. I think we need to think about consistency because some up here may say, oh, I like your project, I don't like your project. We're gonna give you more money. Somewhere I think we ought to establish some criteria. Or at least a boundary that makes sense. And that's the question I'm raising. I don't know what it is. I think we're gonna have to get some advice and counsel, but somewhere in here, I think we need some boundaries. I liked item 4, agreement terms. I thought that was really well done, which is, it's on, starting on page number 3 of 5 or 10 in the package. It's got subsection 4A says an agreement established with firm must include and list 20 items, and I thought those were excellent. And then on item 5, it says the city has developed criteria for programs that are available on the city's website. I just think we need to be able to look at what those look like, Megan, because it says we've already developed, and if we have, great, I just didn't know where they're at. Okay, and then under 5, going on to page 5 of the agreement, or page 12, we have the maximum requirements. This type of project is, we have a number of blanks. If that's where we want to define what the numbers are, but I just think we need to think about what that looks like. Okay, so I just, at some point, I don't know how we can pass an ordinance without getting that into the process. And the application I thought was fine. So those were my big comments. I just, if we can get the criteria established, and I frankly, I don't know where we could go get guidance for that for a community our size.
That's why we kind of steal from other cities. So
Yeah.
I know Pecos, they utilize 380s.
Yep.
So what I can do is I can get other cities. We just have to remember we're also unique because we don't have Pecos money.
Oh, I know, yeah, I know. So find poor cities like us.
And we don't
Yeah,
have that.
that's what we need.
That available land that they have. This one is Odessa, Ector County.
Okay,
So we can look in that area as well and see if there's a little bit more specifics.
okay,
As far as some of the programs, the way it's broken down, it's the small business program, the tax rebate program.
signage.
Yeah, the signage program. And those can all be like changed. We can kind of make up our own based on what other people have.
Yeah.
So I can try to find more examples.
Would we want to go talk to some of our business owners in town? And get their input about what would make sense?
You can, I ask them, I don't know if. I think talking to the business owners is a great idea. My only concern is, do they understand what a 380
Oh,
is
yeah.
designed for?
Most of them won't.
And so I don't wanna go out there and say, hey, we're looking at putting in programs, and it's like, oh, well, the city's gonna give us, or the city's
Yeah.
gonna.
Yep.
Provide, when in reality, it's an agreement that you have to do A, B, and C. To get A, B, and C. I think a lot of the businesses just from the downtown association or business association was really the maintenance.
Yep.
That's been the biggest concern about business owners, is having access to funds to be able to make the repairs. We've had a couple community members talk about the facades. A lot of people wish
Mhm.
that the downtown had a consistent, like,
Yep, look better. Yep.
you know, everyone painted their building the same color.
Right.
It was kind of, that's been a big one. As far as new construction in the 380, Pecos uses it a lot because they have the land.
Yep.
And so their agreements are coming in with, hey, we'll provide you this. They have a Starbucks. You know, they got a Wendy's, they're bringing in the businesses because they're offering them that land. I think with our programs for the current business owners, it's gonna be the repairs.
Mhm.
Okay.
Hey, I'm
And then-
gonna jump in, Megan, real quick. Is that okay?
Yes,
Okay. I appreciate all that y'all are speaking about that. I was gonna mention just real quick to watch out on looking at Pecos, just because they are literally being talked at the legislature right now about doing really bad. It's not necessarily 380 agreements, but with their economic development, they're doing agreements throughout the state and going beyond what they're allowed to do, at least in the legislators' minds. And so be careful looking at what they're doing, because they're going to get penalized for what they're doing. And two, my personal thought is right along what Rick's saying, is talk to local businesses. My view, and I'm hoping some others will continue this view, is we want to support small and local businesses in our community. If a Starbucks wants to come, I know you love Starbucks, Megan, but if a Starbucks wants to come to Alpine, they're going to make a ton of freaking money, and they're going to do just fine if they want to set up one here. Same with the Whataburger, same with the Wendy's, same with any other corporate franchise, anything. And I know some of those can kind of be looked at like a small business because they're franchises, but let's support local people. Let's support small businesses. If there's some regional franchises, I might be able to, say, okay, but I am not trying to bring a huge corporate business to Alpine, much less give them tax write-offs. And that's just my view. So I'm hoping you can look at TML or reach out to folks that have incentivized small and local businesses with these types of agreements. And that's all I got to say there. Thanks.
thank you.
So thank you, Reagan. No, I was saying that's how they've entice people to come in, is they have the land. I'm not a fan of Starbucks.
No.
That would be something I said we could offer even local businesses is the land. But those would be bigger 380s, and they would have a longer time period, especially if they had to produce not only the revenue, but to provide the jobs and things like that. Like I said, with the local businesses, the big thing is gonna be the repairs if they're currently local. We don't have the capability to provide the, hey, I've got this plot of land, do you wanna build even a mom and pop store on it? Because we don't have the land available. So those would be your type of programs, whether they be small, large, medium, however you wanted to word them. But yes, definitely reach out to your local businesses. Like I said, I'm speaking on their behalf as far as, what we've heard with the comments from the public in regards to just maintaining the businesses themselves.
Yep.
And that expense. As I experienced that personally, it's maintaining those buildings.
Uh-huh.
how we can reach out the businesses? Go and talk to the individual or just call for a meeting, so invite all of their business. So we can have more people.
You can do
To
it either
discuss.
way. I think the one-on-one might be more personable, especially when you're talking to business owners. They may not all want to meet together and,
Sharing their stuff.
yeah, share their concerns.
Yep.
And we've done meetings like that in the past, where we've invited even all the contractors, so we can
Yeah.
tell them. And we get poor turnout.
For sure.
If you know business owners at where you're at, step next door and say, hey, the city's thinking of putting in funding opportunities for businesses. What would something you'd want? And oh, I need better infrastructure. I need all my electricity rewired.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're talking to painting all the outside.
So those are the
Uh-huh.
facade grants, which is also part of this, and that's a different.
Do these grants go through you or through the small business?
No, so the small business is completely different.
Different.
This would go through the city, and this would go through city council.
The city council.
So, and then this wouldn't be, I'm applying, I'm guaranteed to get it, because you do have to take in consideration what funding we have available. So, if we're gonna go, say we're gonna do facade grants and we're gonna do budget 50,000 for the year, and someone comes in and says, hey, I want to replace all of my signage and this and this, and it's gonna cost me 49,000. Then you're giving away one facade grant if you agree to it. So there has to be a budget to it, otherwise you're just gonna be handing out money. And there's also the checklist with it. So say you do facade grants and they want to paint, it may be a reimbursable grant where it's okay, you paint your building and then we'll cut you the check for what you spend in supplies. They're set up so many different ways, but you have to make sure that they follow through with it. It could be a minor construction project where they're making repairs to a building and the city's gonna, waive the permit fees. There's all different things you can put in these agreements to help them get the process. Now, that doesn't mean that they can't, or they may not have to pay the permit fee, but they still have to have the building inspected. We don't want them to rewire a whole building and not do it correctly and, create an unsafe space.
They have to fill out the application that it comes in this package, or it's a different application.
So no, we can change the application. So these are just drafts. This is just to get the thought process and the idea out there. This is a draft to apply, and then there's going to be an actual agreement that the attorneys will put together that outlines the responsibilities of both sides.
So right now we just need some information, what the businesses think or want or need.
Yeah, I would just pop into them and say, hey, the city's looking at providing funding opportunities, utilizing, specific agreements that the state allows the city to use. If you had the opportunity to apply, what things would you want to improve in your building?
And for the new business right here, you didn't put amount or number of jobs. How do that will work?
That's all set by the city council. So the blanks are for you to make decisions. So like Rick was saying, what do we want the minimum? Do we want something where it's consistent? You have to have a minimum revenue of $10,000. Or you have to have a minimum of 2 employees. The city can put in starting numbers, and then the agreement would actually outline what they're required. So if I was to bring in a business, and whatever it was, and you were to tell me I have to have a minimum of 2 employees, okay, it's me and other half or Geo, we're gonna open up our own pizza parlor. I've met your requirements. Now, maybe the agreement comes around and it's like, what, the minimum was 2, but you're operating, 100 hours a week or however long you're open, the minimum employees, we want to see at least 10. And then ideally, once the agreement gets signed, everyone's in agreement, the city has to make sure to stay on top of that. So if I say I'm gonna hire 10 employees, and Gio and I are running it by ourselves the whole time, we're not in agreement with what you guys told us. So we have violated that contract. It's 100% council decision, and you can change it, the minimum is just like, hey, for us to even consider your application, you have to indicate you're gonna meet the minimum. And then the agreement would outline actual what is required for both sides.
This thing that these passed it through and then you approve it, who will go and check that they are following the rules?
So, and that's one thing I've talked to Darren about. So we did hire an economic development administrator. She will start at the end of May. She is moving to Alpine. She's been here. She's worked for the Small Business Development Center. So this
Oh,
would be
good.
something that we would put on her plate. As a, and
Is she a local or she's coming from out of town?
she's coming from out of town, but she's lived here before. And she worked for the Small Development Center. They want to come home. So we're excited that they're coming back. But this would be something that position would help monitor, in addition to the Office of the City Manager. To make sure that every, maybe in the agreement, annual report to council, or, quarterly checkup. When the initial agreement gets put in place, you're gonna wanna make sure if there's something that has to be done in 3 months, 6 months, 9 months, that it's done. And like I said, I know the county unfortunately ran into a little bit of issues with theirs. Which is why I had the conversation with Darren, is we have to make sure we stay on top of it. So we don't wanna just hand out 500 380 agreements.
Just from we talked about three, or there's three approaches in here. One is a signage or building upgrade agreement, which implies giving out cash. And there's a tax rebate program. Why wouldn't we want to start out small and say, because I don't think we're ready to go put a budget together for X tens of thousands of dollars. Why wouldn't we want to start off and say, we're going to support 380 agreements on the basis that we're willing to give tax rebates to enable a business the ability to get started, whether on sales tax revenue or on property tax. That's the way there's no money out of pocket. But if we put money on the table, to your point, it's going to be, people are going to come in and says, I want X thousands of dollars out of your bucket. I'll make the following commitments. It's just not clear to me we're ready for that yet.
And you don't have to include it. Like I said, this is just including a little bit of everything. As far as the tax rebate, that could be the only direction the city goes, as far as, we'll allow up to a certain percentage in tax rebates. And that way, we're only gonna award so many tax rebates a year. And we currently have it in our ordinances to allow for that type of a commitment from the city, but no one's followed through with it.
Do we need a Main Street committee for that? Because doesn't that fall under the Main Street thing? No? Okay. The one question I had real quick was, the person that's gonna be hired, that's gonna be coming on as the economic development manager, do they have experience in anything? Because then we're not just throwing them into the deep water. And maybe if they have experience in one of these, it's easier for them to transition from wherever they came from into, I agree with Rick 100% where let's not offer them a plethora of options, because then we need to be experts in multiple options. But if this person already has little knowledge in any of these, maybe that's the easiest way to transition.
So they have worked with other entities who have done things like this. They don't feel that they have the level of training that they should have. But they have a huge tourism background and have worked with chambers of commerce. They've worked with the Small Business Development Center. I think it's part of the interview. They didn't realize, oh, well, yeah, I do that. Oh, well, yeah, I do work with this.
Who is it?
I'd really like to wait till she's here. to not jinx it.
Yeah, you got what, 30 days left? 30 days in April? Yeah, you're a month.
Like, we offered her the position, and she hasn't fully, I think she was doing it this week, letting her current employer know that
Yeah,
she's.
okay, so she's not let the current employer know.
I'd like to give her that option.
Uh-huh.
But at the same time, the very first thing is the training. They will be going to multiple trainings on economic development. The Texas Economic Development Commission. They're offering one right off the bat in June. So we've already planned for her to start filling in those roles.
And because you have earmarked money in the current budget for October for this position, was there any money over the labor cost that we have? Like, what's our purse that we have available to kind of slow roll into this?
As far as,
How much money is earmarked towards economic development, whether it's through the cost of that labor person that you're gonna hire or incentive programs?
so there's no incentive programs. We just hired, or just registered for those,
So we have no money in the program,
not for incentives, no.
but we do have. for
Because we
training.
don't have a policy in place to even offer incentives. There was no fucking budget.
So then almost, if we're here and we've got, what, 4 months, how long till October for the new budget? I know we're gonna be working on the new budget, but now that you have this human that's gonna come in, I would almost pick her brain and think about what, 5 months, that's pretty good to get this person in, start training them. And then maybe they can reach out to the businesses as well and see what they think is gonna be, what's requested most from the businesses, so that you can build a budget around that.
Yeah, because one of the things you guys talked about with economic development in the businesses, and I know 380s was on the to-do list, is fully understanding what do we have? What is for rent, what is for sale, who owns what?
Yep.
You know, what are the amenities? I know in speaking with some of the leaders of Alpine, it's like people undersell BBT. BBT provides some of the best internet service in our area, but it's not mentioned, hey, you have access to. What other amenities do we have that when you rent this space, this is what's included? So we don't sell Alpine as far as economic development. You've heard a lot of complaining in regards to, oh, there's 100 storefronts that are empty. But if the business, or not the business, but the property owner is, well, that's my property, I don't want to do anything with it. It's understanding, there may be 100, but these are the ones that are actively trying to be filled. I know that the biggest issue we have is cost of everything. You know, I want to rent a space, you know, Gio and I got our business coming up, we want to rent a space to see how it works, and they're gonna charge me 5,000 a month. That's not realistic for someone who's just starting off, but to understand what are they charging, what comes with it, are they covering utilities, are they not covering utilities? Having that database right off the bat will be really useful for those who are having the conversation with the small business development center. Hey, we've got someone who's looking at starting a business, they don't really want to do it from their house. What do you have? These are the facilities we have available, this is who you would rent from, this is what amenities are being provided. So we're kind of creating a unique economic development position because we want them to work with the small business development, we want them to work with the business leaders. And then those of you, so you're our audience. Those of you who've heard me talk about economic development, I'm a big proponent of, you've got to start local. We got to utilize what we have here before we start bringing people in. Because we, like Reagan said, it's helping the locals, the community, the mom and pops. And so I am a big, supporter of that, but it's also, if I'm starting my business, who do I go to? Like, I see a for rent sign and I call, I was like, well, is this the only place for rent? And so having that person start off, hey, this is everything that's available, and then moving into, hey, these are incentives to get you started, or hey, great idea, let me hook you up with a small business development center so that maybe they can help you with the cash side of it. Get a loan or a business plan put together. This is the space you can use. And then we can start filling in those. But we have property owners, and we've all had this discussion at some point that it's my property and I don't want to do anything with it.
Which those are the people that have property that don't want to do anything with it. Those are the properties I'm least interested in incentivizing the capital with public
Yeah.
funds.
No hold on.
And that's where, this comes in handy, because if they come in and say, hey, well, now I want to do something with it. Well, why don't you get established and then we'll have that conversation. Because there are buildings right now that I think would love to have a tax rebate incentive as far as, hey, I wanna do the facade, I need to replace all, I keep saying electricity. Wanna rewire my building. And I know that building services would probably greatly appreciate knowing that they're upgrading to be safe.
Question.
Yes.
I represent a hotel, but if I wanted to, open a cycling spin studio, for example, and there's an application process to go through, is there if it's a new business owner that's coming from out of town, is there an interview process that you would also go, for example, with you guys, to interview that person to come into the city, or you're just your application's approved, you can open your business as long as you have the funds type of thing?
So with the 380 agreements, it would be a conversation. It would be, you're coming in with your new business or upgrades or what you want to do to your facility or buy a facility, and the city would come in and you'd fill out the application, then there would be discussion. Because the long term is to have an agreement. It's, we're gonna provide you this tax rebate for 10 years, as long as each year you do this, and this.
And then during the, I guess, check-in process of the new person, is that going to be considered like an audit process essentially? Like you're coming in, making sure you have your 10 employees, that this is operating correctly? Okay, so it'd be
Yes.
somebody's been on.
And like, a part of the agreement could be that that business has to report, like an annual report, provide annual financials. The city's not gonna just write a check and say, good luck.
There you go. Yeah. Okay.
Which I would be interested in that, because we've never entered a 380 or anything else in our lives. I've never been with a city that's entered one. I think it's gonna be very interesting to see, the devil's always in the details, on the complexity of sales tax abatement, a property tax abatement, or grant funds, you know? I'm sure they all, after the actualization of getting that 380 agreement, the process after the fact, who knows how complex that is? That's what I'd really be interested in, reaching out to people that have these 380s and understanding what that process is. Because I think the businesses will be very interested in how, you know, transparent they have to be with that, for clawbacks or anything else.
So I don't think we can do anything with the sales tax. I think it is just for tax abatement, it's
That makes
just
sense.
property. tax.
And if I'm not, Reagan probably knows something about this, being with Austin and everything else. Isn't the state of Texas looking at there's a bill or something like that to regulate 380 agreements, the amount of property tax that can happen, be offered through that? I guess they're really trying to protect the property tax payer as much as possible. So we're losing that leverage as a lever of a 380 agreement.
I think there are some bills around 380. I haven't heard any moving specific. The one that I was talking about, Pecos, is there, and I'm going to get this wrong exactly how I talk about it. Megan might know more on this, but it's it's like their housing authority or something is making agreements outside of the county that Pecos is located in. So like, for instance, Pecos Housing Authority, or whatever, it could be through their economic development department, is what I'm trying to say, is making an agreement with an apartment complex in Dallas County, in the middle of Dallas. And if they have 25% low income housing, then they get their property taxes taken off of the rolls locally. And so therefore, like Pecos County, or Pecos, the city of Pecos is making an agreement with an apartment complex in Dallas, and that doesn't even get talked to the Dallas City Council, and all of a sudden $1 million in their property taxes get taken away just like that. And so they're about to make it to where you can only do agreements in the jurisdiction that you're in, which was obviously an unintended consequence and very dumb of the legislature to not see this up front. That's more of what I'm trying to say here. I'm just trying to say City of Pecos has not been a great player and is trying to fight against that right now, because they get paid lump sums, say like $200,000 for writing that agreement. And so they just keep adding that to their general revenue.
Reagan, I have heard those, I don't want to say rumors, but yes, the legislation is going after Pecos.
But to your question, I think it's fairly easy to establish if a business hires on more employees, because there's gotta be quarterly filings for that. That's an easy thing to verify. The same in terms of when they do their state filings from an income standpoint, because you have to file with the Secretary of State in terms of certain levels. That's easy to verify as well. So actually, I don't think the verification, if it's about numbers of employees and revenue, will be a big issue to go work. Still have to put the mechanism in place, but businesses have to do that anyway as part of their business.
So 380s are specific. And like I said, some cities, they put them on a shelf and then they come and expire and realize, oh, well, they didn't do what they said they were gonna do. That's my concern. I don't wanna go into 380s and go on a shelf and well, we forgot to check, or, oh, there wasn't a mechanism to verify. Cause you'll notice in here, it says new jobs must be maintained for a minimum of 5 years. So if Gio's on my payroll and then 2 years later, Gio's not on my payroll, did I hire someone to replace Geo? Do we want to make it more specific that, you know, those individuals, but then Geo resigned because he was moving to Austin. There's got to be ways to have those conversations. And I know Reagan will like that. The first one about creation of permanent full-time jobs paying at least double the federal minimum. You know, so we're saying, yeah, we want you to start, you know, your business and we're gonna give you a good tax rebate. But then you're gonna pay your employees at least $14.50.
Yep.
So say that there are things in here that we need to change, we need to discuss. That, you know, we don't wanna hinder the development. But at the same time, we don't want to say, hey, we're gonna give you this tax abatement in the city, not see anything.
Yeah, that was, I asked who will check this, but now you say you already have a people to check all this.
Yeah, her to-do
Yes.
list is started and you know, she has some.
So.
Don't say that. It might scare her.
Like Karen's approach of get the new person on board. I think the other is, element, I think if we start with tax rebates or abatements, that's a low risk for us to approach.
Right.
And then whatever that other, or the individual hiring comes up with, we might be able to add back in. And then my inclination is almost put this on the shelf for the next, 8 to 10 weeks and bring it back. That way you get your new employee on board, they'll have the opportunity to look at it, we'll be far more informed. And that gives us plenty of time to get it implemented. And it also will allow you to kind of work through the budget process to be able to bring it forward. Because I think the only one who's beat our door down thus far, looking for abatements, was Colin. And I don't see a lot of others rolling in,
Right.
but that gives us time to learn and grow into this doggone thing.
That's great points, Rick. I like the timetables and stuff. The one thing I'd note to the 15 or the minimum wage, twice the minimum wage, is you never know when that'll increase. So I would put an actual number to that. I don't think the federal minimum wage will increase, nor Texas's in the next few years. But who knows? They make it $15 an hour in Texas next session or something, and all of a sudden it's $30, which I'm all for, but I would just put an actual number. I think it should be at least $15 an hour for hourly staff, and something more for salary. It should be like $18 to $20. You times that out by the yearly salary for salaried staff, and then we should require them to offer health insurance to any full-time employees. Now they'll probably try to not have as many full-time employees with that. Everybody tries to skirt things like that, but you get where I'm going.
And I would say, like, from my perspective, from a 380 agreement is, I don't want to run the business. I just want to induce capital to come here
Yep.
and invest in Alpine.
Yep.
I want entrepreneurs to come here. I want them open business. I want people spending money, and we get the increase in the property tax side and sales tax side. I was going to say, quick question for Megan. I know Presidio has a municipal development district, and I think Marfa takes part of their sales tax over towards an EDC, but it's a type 2 EDC, and most of that money runs into their park system. I think they take 0.25% or something like that, and that's how they've been able to invest in their parks. Those two things are economic development, but kind of sideswap, because my question is anybody in our area doing 380s? Anybody we can reach out to and say, what 380s? The only people I know is larger cities or Pecos.
It's really just all larger cities, Pecos and the county to the 3.
So the EDCs and the MDDs out here are basically, they've been created to take sales tax money to put into economic development, but that could be through parks, quality of life, or anything else, not necessarily 380s.
And then a lot of, well, I don't know if Presidio does it, but that's the facade grant side. It's because they have that money specifically for EDC. Remember, right now, we're just using general fund. And so they have that money, and it does have requirements in how they use it, not as strict as obviously other pots of money. So they're using it as like, hey, I want to paint my building to match all of downtown. They'll say, okay, how much is it going to cost? And then they.
So Presidio does have a structure that we
Yes.
could reach out and ask. Okay, cool.
I have a question for you. Have you reached out the Border Patrol about all the National Guards who are coming to this area and see what I heard? They're going to build a kind of 700 houses, like a village just for them, and then we have their own stores, their own facilities. So, but they haven't decided they want to do it in Alpine or they want to do it in Marfa.
Susan's great.
Yeah,
So,
the
okay.
decision's already been made.
It's Marfa. It's 500 will be built at the airport for beds, rooms. And dining facilities. But the 10th Mountain Division has backed off on that recently to say that's our plan. But I suspect that's what they're gonna go do. Alpine would be a second location potentially, but when Megan and I were out there, they hadn't even talked to us. We said, hey, yeah, we're from Alpine. They haven't talked to us yet.
They
Oh.
randomly called with no information,
Yeah.
just asking questions, but we also don't have the land capacity.
Yeah.
So Marfa's airport has extra space.
And they're
We're-
central located.
But it wasn't for shops and that, it was literally, it was housing in a cafeteria.
Yeah, dining
Oh,
facilities.
cafeteria.
Like, kind of like I call them a man camp.
Yep, that's what it is.
Mhm.
Soldier camp.
Anything else?
No.
Reagan?
It's
Okay.
freezing on me. Sorry. Nope, I'm all good. Thank you.
Okay, all right, and with that, we're gonna adjourn this workshop, 4:42 PM.